The rain had just begun to fall over Mumbai's crowded skyline when Arav Mehta, 26, sat at his desk staring at the flickering screen of his second-hand laptop. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, but the only thing he typed that night was a sigh. He was supposed to finish another round of invoices for the logistics company he worked for, a job that paid him just enough to survive, not to live. His boss, Mr. Khanna, had told him earlier that day, "Arav, people like you should be grateful to have stability. Dreams don't pay the rent." That sentence stayed with him longer than the rain. Later that night, while scrolling through YouTube for anything, to quiet his mind, he came across a thumbnail titled, "Rich Dad, Poor Dad Audiobook. Book Summary in Hindi, mas Financial Books." He clicked on it half-heartedly, expecting another self-help lecture. But within minutes, something changed. The voice in the audiobook said, "The poor and the middle class work for money. The rich make money work for them." Arav paused the video. He replayed it, then replayed it again. He thought of his father, a kind schoolteacher who had always said, "Beta, get a safe job. Never take risks." His father was his hero, honest, hard-working, but always tired, always worrying about bills. And then he thought of Rohit Suri, his father's old friend, a man who had dropped out of college, started a tiny electronics repair shop, and now owned 3 stores. Rohit uncle was loud, confident, and generous, always talking about making money work for you. As the rain drummed against his window, Arav realized he had grown up between 2 worlds, between 2 fathers, one who taught him security, the other who lived freedom. That night, something shifted inside him. The first spark the next morning. Instead of taking the usual bus to work, Arav walked. He needed to think. He passed by a street vendor, a thin, wrinkled old man selling umbrellas for 50 rupees each. The rain had made him shiver, yet he smiled as he handed an umbrella to a customer. Arav stopped. "Uncle, why don't you raise your price?" "It's raining." "People would still buy," the old man chuckled softly. "Beta, if I earn more today by being clever, I'll lose more tomorrow by losing trust. Money is good, but respect feeds you longer." Arav nodded. Something about that line stayed with him. At work, he opened a new browser tab and searched how to start a business with no money. He spent his lunch breaks listening to more audiobooks. Think and Grow Rich, The Psychology of Money, Rich Dad's Cash Flow Quadrant. Slowly, his lunch hours became classrooms, and his notebook became his secret MBA. One evening, his boss caught him sketching a business idea in the margins of a report. "Dreaming again." Khanna smirked. "You're not made for that world, Mehta. You're too nice." That night, Arav didn't feel insulted. He felt awake. The leap of faith 3 months later, after saving every spare rupee and skipping countless meals out, Arav launched his small side project, EduSpire, an online tutoring platform connecting retired teachers with underprivileged students for affordable fees. His mother cried when he told her he'd used his savings for it. "Arav, what if it fails?" He smiled gently. "Then I'll fail forward, Ma." The first few weeks were brutal. Only 2 students signed up. One teacher quit because of technical issues. Arav's laptop crashed twice, but one afternoon he received a message from a parent. "Sir, my daughter just passed her math exam for the first time." "Thank you." She says your teacher, Mrs. Sharma, explains with love. Arav stared at that message for a long time, longer than he'd stared at any paycheck. That night, he listened again to the Rich Dad, Poor Dad audiobook. The voice said, "The most powerful asset we have is our mind. If trained well, it can create enormous wealth." He whispered into the dark. "Maybe wealth isn't just money." The false success came slowly, then suddenly. Within a year, EduSpire had over 100 teachers and nearly 1,000 students. Local news wrote about it as a revolution in community learning. But fame, like fire, burns the hands of the unprepared. Arav was approached by a slick investor offering to scale the platform at the cost of control. "You'll be rich overnight," the man promised. The deal looked too good to refuse. Arav signed it. Months later, he realized his mistake. The company was rebranded, the teachers were underpaid, and the focus shifted from helping children to maximizing profits. His name disappeared from the website entirely. When he confronted the investor, he laughed. "Welcome to the real world, kid. Business isn't about feelings." For the first time since he'd started, Arav felt truly poor. That night, he sat on the same rooftop where he'd first listened to Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The city lights shimmered below him like scattered gold. He whispered, "Rich Dad, Poor Dad, maybe both live inside me." The real lesson: the next morning, Arav went to visit his old schoolteacher father, now retired. The small house smelled of turmeric and old books. His father was reading the newspaper when Arav walked in. Without looking up, his father said softly, "You look tired, Beta." Arav sat down. "I lost everything, Papa." His father folded the newspaper and smiled gently. "Then you've gained what most never find: clarity." He reached into a drawer and pulled out a torn notebook. Inside were hand-drawn graphs, scribbles, and notes in faded blue ink. "I started this when you were born," his father said. "It was my plan for a small coaching center. But I never opened it. I was too afraid of failing. I worked for safety, not purpose. You did what I couldn't." Tears welled up in Arav's eyes. "But I failed too." His father shook his head. "No, Beta. You learned. That makes you rich already." The returned Arav returned home with a quiet fire in his chest. Instead of restarting EduSpire for profit, he decided to rebuild it as a foundation, free for children in need, funded by voluntary donations. He reached out to his old teachers, volunteers, and even that umbrella seller, who became the first street mentor, teaching children about honesty and daily survival. Word spread. The foundation grew. Journalists came again, expecting a success story, but left writing about something deeper, a movement of kindness disguised as education. When asked what inspired him, Arav said simply, "A book that taught me money is a tool, not a treasure, and a father who taught me that real wealth is courage." The twist of fate: one day, a sleek car stopped outside the foundation. A well-dressed man stepped out, the same investor who had once taken his company. "I heard what you've done," he said, almost sheepish. "Your project, it's everywhere. I'd like to make a donation." Arav looked at him, calm but firm. "We don't take donations from people who trade hearts for numbers." The man hesitated, then whispered, "You've changed, Arav." Arav smiled faintly. "No, I just stopped measuring worth in currency." As the car drove away, a group of children ran toward him, shouting, "Sir, come. We made a video about learning fractions with mangoes." Arav laughed, running toward them under the same sky that once saw his tears. The final chapter: years later, a gray-haired Arav stood before a crowd at a university convocation in New York. He had been invited to speak on redefining success. Behind him glowed the words, "EduSpire Global Foundation, empowering minds, enriching hearts." He began, "When I was young, I had two fathers, one who believed in safety and one who believed in freedom. But both loved me enough to let me fail." He paused, scanning the sea of faces. "One taught me to earn money. The other taught me to earn meaning. But it was a third father, a book, that taught me the bridge between both, to make money serve humanity." He looked down for a moment, his voice softening. "Today, if you ask me what being rich means, I'll tell you, it's not owning more, it's giving more. Because wealth isn't measured in what we keep, but in what we share." The hall fell silent. Then applause thundered like a wave. As he stepped down from the stage, a little girl from the audience ran up and hugged him. "Sir, I want to start a school like yours one day." He knelt and smiled. "Then you already are rich, Beta." Epilogue: The Whisper of Legacy. That night, back in his hotel room, Arav sat by the window with a cup of tea. Outside, the city buzzed. Neon lights, honking cars, endless ambition. He opened his phone and played that same old YouTube video, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad audiobook in Hindi, just to hear that one line again. "The poor and middle class work for money. The rich make money work for them." He smiled softly. "And the wise," he whispered, "make money work for others." He closed his eyes, the sound of rain beginning once more against the glass, the same rain that had started it all years ago. And somewhere between the thunder and the quiet hum of the city, Arav felt the two fathers within him, one whispering caution, the other courage, both finally at peace because now he was not rich, he was fulfilled. The years flowed by like quiet rivers. EduSpire Global became more than a foundation. It became a movement. Across India, villages painted old classrooms with the words "Learning with Love," and children from the poorest corners began dreaming in colors they had never seen before. Arav, now in his late 50s, had silver streaks in his hair and laughter lines around his eyes. He didn't own a mansion, nor did he drive a luxury car. He still wore the same simple watch his father had given him, its ticking now slower but steady, like his heart. He had long stopped chasing numbers. Instead, he chased smiles. Every week he visited one school, not as a founder, but as a listener. He sat with teachers, ate lunch with students, and often ended up playing cricket barefoot with them in the dusty fields. One afternoon, in a small school outside Jaipur, he met Ravi, a boy of 12 who refused to talk. Teachers said his father had abandoned him, and his mother struggled to pay rent. Arav noticed Ravi always sat at the back sketching with broken pencils. "Why don't you play with the others?" Arav asked gently one day. Ravi shrugged. "They laugh because I don't have shoes." Arav smiled softly, kneeling beside him. "Then maybe they need to learn what real steps look like." The next day, Arav arrived barefoot. The teachers were confused, the students giggled. But when he began his session, teaching them how to draw using shapes and stories, Ravi lifted his head for the first time. When class ended, Arav handed him a small box. Inside was a new set of pencils and an old sketchbook from his own childhood. "These pages helped me dream," he said. "Maybe they'll help you see yours." Ravi looked up, eyes wide. "Sir, why are you so kind?" Arav smiled, eyes glistening. "Because once someone was kind to me when I didn't deserve it." The quiet returned that evening. Arav visited his father's grave. He knelt beside the headstone, brushing away dry leaves. "Papa," he whispered, "I used to think wealth was freedom. Then I thought it was purpose. Now I know it's love." He sat in silence for a while, listening to the soft rustle of wind through the trees. Then, almost on impulse, he opened his phone and replayed the audiobook, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Chapter 1. As the familiar voice filled the air, he smiled. "You know, Dad," he said softly, "I had two fathers who shaped me. But the man who made me who I am was you." He closed his eyes and felt something deep. Not sorrow, not pride, but gratitude. The kind that fills you when you realize you've finally lived what you were meant to teach. The ripple a few years later, Arav's health began to fade. He spent more time at home, watching the younger volunteers run EduSpire better than he ever could. One morning as he sipped his tea, his assistant entered. "Sir, there's a visitor." A boy named Ravi. Arav looked up and there he was, taller now, wearing neat clothes and holding a sketchbook. "Sir," Ravi said, smiling shyly, "I came to show you something." He opened the sketchbook. On the first page was a drawing of Arav sitting barefoot in a classroom, surrounded by children laughing. On the last page was a picture of a tree whose roots were made of books, and whose branches reached toward a glowing sun. At the bottom, Ravi had written, "Some men build empires. You built mines." Arav couldn't speak. Tears slid down his cheeks as he pulled Ravi into a hug. "Keep planting trees like that one," he whispered. "They'll outlive us all." The final lesson. A few months later, EduSpire announced a new annual award, the Meta Fellowship for Young Dreamers, a scholarship for children who used creativity to help others. The first recipient was Ravi, who had begun teaching art to orphans in his neighborhood. At the ceremony, Ravi stood on stage and said, "Arav sir once told me that wealth is what we give when no one is watching. I didn't understand it then. I do now." Arav sat in the front row, smiling weakly, his hands trembling slightly as he clapped. He looked up as though seeing his father in the audience. Later that night, back in his room, he wrote his final note in his journal. "Life gave me two fathers, one who taught me to survive, another who taught me to thrive. But it was kindness that made me truly rich. If anyone reads this, remember, you don't need to own the world to change it. Just love it enough to try." He placed the notebook on his bedside table and looked out the window. The rain had begun again, soft, familiar, endless. He smiled. "Full circle," he whispered. And somewhere in that quiet night, as raindrops tapped gently against the glass, Arav Mehta, the boy who once had nothing but a dream and an audiobook, finally found peace. Epilogue, the voice that never fades. Years later, children in classrooms across the world still listen to a short clip that begins their day. Arav's recorded words, "Money can buy comfort, but compassion builds kingdoms. Learn, give, rise, and remember. True wealth lives in hearts, not in banks, and in a small corner of the internet." Under that same old YouTube video, Rich Dad, Poor Dad audiobook, book summary in Hindi, financial books. A pinned comment reads, "This video changed my life. I listened to it on a rainy night, and I built something that now belongs to everyone." It had been 20 years since Arav Mehta's passing, but his voice still lived, not in monuments or museums, but in the morning assemblies of hundreds of schools. Every day began the same way. A teacher would press play, and children would rise from their desks as a familiar voice filled the air. Money can build walls, but kindness builds bridges. So, build wisely, and as those words echoed through the halls, one man always listened with his hand on his heart, Ravi Sharma, now the director of EduSpire Global Foundation. He was 32, wearing the same simple watch Arav had once worn. His hair had a few silver strands already, the kind that came not from age, but from purpose. On this particular morning, Ravi stood in front of a crowd of students in Nairobi, Junyantu, the first EduSpire school outside India. Behind him hung a banner that read, "Learning with Love, the Arav Mehta Memorial Academy." He looked at the children, wide-eyed, barefoot, smiling. For a moment he saw himself in them, the journey that came full circle. After Arav's passing, EduSpire nearly collapsed. Donations dried up. Volunteers left. Ravi, barely in his 20s then, had no money. No connections. Only the belief that education with empathy could still change lives. He remembered sitting alone in the old Mumbai office one night, surrounded by flickering lights and unpaid bills. He had almost given up when he found a note in Arav's handwriting tucked inside a drawer. "If your dream depends on applause, it will die in silence, but if it depends on purpose, it will rise even from ashes." Ravi read that line 100 times, and the next morning he decided he wouldn't let the dream die. He sold his motorbike. He taught classes himself. He recorded free online lessons from a borrowed phone, using chalkboards painted on old doors. One by one, the teachers returned. Then came sponsors. Small at first, a bookstore, a cafe owner, a retired professor. Within 5 years, EduSpire had reborn, this time stronger, humbler, and truly global. The world listened. Ravi began speaking at international conferences, not about business models or returns on investment, but about human ROI, return on inspiration. His TED Talk, "The Richness of Giving," went viral worldwide. He ended it by holding up Arav's old sketchbook and saying, "This book taught me something no finance class ever could. That legacy isn't what we leave behind. It's what we ignite in others." In a quiet moment backstage, a woman approached him, a gray-haired teacher from Boston. "Mr. Sharma," she said softly, "we play Mr. Mehta's audio every morning in our school. The kids think of him as their invisible grandfather." Ravi smiled, eyes glistening. That's exactly what he would have wanted. A letter in the wind. Years passed. EduSpire expanded to 42 countries, teaching over 3 million children. But Ravi remained the same, humble, grounded, still writing thank you notes by hand. Every month, he visited one classroom unannounced, sitting quietly in the back, just watching children learn. One day, in a small school in a remote Nepalese valley, a little girl named Meera gave him a letter. "It's for the man in the voice," she said shyly. Ravi opened it. Inside, written in crayon, were the words, "Dear sir, I don't have shoes, but I have dreams. When I grow up, I want to teach people to dream too." He smiled, holding back tears. He looked up at the Himalayan peaks golden in the setting sun and whispered, "Arav, sir, your seeds are still growing." The final chapter on the 25th anniversary of EduSpire. Ravi organized a global broadcast. A live event streamed across all partner schools. The theme was simple, the wealth of humanity. Thousands tuned in, Students, teachers, parents, strangers. Ravi began his speech. I once asked my teacher what it means to be rich. He said, "To be rich is to give without keeping score." Today, I realize that we were never poor. We just hadn't started sharing yet. He paused, his voice catching slightly. Arav Mehta was not a businessman. He was a gardener. He planted ideas, watered hearts, and taught us to bloom. And now, his students are his forest. He held up a small keychain, a metal coin engraved with Arav's quote, "True wealth lives in hearts, not in banks." And as the camera panned across continents, from classrooms in India to libraries in Ghana to a schoolyard in Texas, children of every color and language said together, "Thank you, Arav, sir." The world went quiet for a moment. Then came the applause, not thunderous, but steady like rain on rooftops. Epilogue. One more rain later that night. Ravi sat alone on the foundation's rooftop. It had begun to rain, gently, like it always did at the right moments. He looked up at the sky and whispered, "It's raining again, sir. Are you listening?" The wind rustled softly, carrying the faint sound of laughter, or maybe just memory. He smiled. "Tears mixing with raindrops, I guess," he said. "Some lessons never end." In the morning, when the sun rose over the city, the first light fell on a mural painted on the wall below. It showed a young boy in a wheelchair, a kind maid and a father kneeling beside them, echoing a scene from Arav's favorite story, the one he always said taught him how to believe again. And below it, the words were simple. Rich dad, poor dad, both taught him how to live rich in heart. Final message, wealth fades. Legacies ripple. What you build with love never ends, it simply changes hands.